Hello and welcome to what I am deeming as build outlines. These are going to be the style of video that I try to go for because I don't want to make videos where you have to use exactly what I tell you to use. I want you to use what you feel comfortable with, but give you a general idea of some fun stuff to use. And today we're going to be looking at some Warlock stuff, namely Nezarec Sins. Now, Nezarec Sins is an exotic helmet piece that claims that, or doesn't claim it does, void kills increase your ability to regen. Now, this works on every single subclass for your Warlock. It works for your void, your solar, your arc, and your stasis. You just got to get void ability or void kills with weapons. Now, there's plenty of weapons that you can do this with, especially this season. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to take advantage of a few light mods, which are apparently up on the up and rise, as Bungie seems to think that they are good, and they are. You can use them to make yourself charge with light, you can use them to give yourself damage, you can use them to give yourself a bunch of other ability style regen rates. And what I'm going to use in this build video, just to give people an idea, is we're going to use Elemental Charge. Become charged with light by picking up an Elemental Well. If the Elemental Well type matches your subclass, you gain 2 stacks with Charged with Light, which is insane. You know, you get 2 free stacks. It's crazy. We're also going to be using Protective Light, which is while charged with light, you gain significant damage resistance against combatants when your shields are destroyed. Now, this has saved me in a lot of endgame content. There's many a times where I'll be running GMs like, oh, thank you Protective Light for actually saving my life, and it works. If you were going to get one shot regardless, though, it doesn't work. We're also going to be using Elemental Ordnance. Defeating a combatant with a grenade spawns an Elemental Well that matches your subclass energy type. So, if you're running solar, you get a solar kill, you drop a solar well, you pick it up, become charged with light. That's how it's going to work. And then, we have Font of Wisdom. Picking up an Elemental Well that matches your subclass energy type grants you a temporary significant increase to your intellect, improving the recharge rate of your super. It gives you max intellect for 30 seconds. 30 seconds, you have 100 intellect, which is pretty good. So, essentially what you can do is you can chain your void ability kills, get your grenades, throw your grenades, get more Elemental Wells, and keep your super going at all times. We're also going to be pairing this with particle deconstruction because, quite frankly, this season, if you're not using a fusion rifle or a linear fusion rifle, you're going to miss out on a lot of DPS opportunities. There's been many times where I've run like a Vault of Glass, we're running Templar Atheon, and fusion rifles and linear fusion rifles just absolutely slap. They do a ton of damage. So the general gameplay loop for this build is, like I said earlier, you throw a grenade, get your Well of Lights, and then you use your void weapons to then proc the Abyssal Extractors on Nezarec Sins, and then you keep getting grenade energy, you keep throwing grenades, you keep getting super, repeat the process. Now, there are some options you can use for weapons. There are auto rifles you can use with Osmosis. You have things like Skatewalk, rolls Osmosis, and Last Breath, which also rolls Osmosis. So if you're running a Void subclass, you can triple down or double down or whatever you want with your Void kills. Osmosis is when you throw a grenade, you get your kinetic weapon becomes that element. It comes on the catalyst for Traveler's Chosen. It's a really, really good perk for PvE content. You also have things like Gnawing Hunger, which is void out the gate. And then you also have Hard Light, which you can swap elements on. So those are really, really good options because then we have Auto Rifle Anti-Barrier. And then you have your bows for your Overload, which are Le Monarch and Imperial Needle. Now, Le Monarch, on full draws, you get the poison damage, which can re-stun Overloads. If you hit an Overload champion with it and you just keep hitting him, if he becomes unstunned before the poison damage goes away, it will restun him. It's really good. I never used it the first time it came around, and now that it's back, I'm gonna ride this thing until the season's over. For the next 6 months, Overload Bow and Le Monarch is my best friend. And then there's the Imperial Needle, which is the bow from Season of the Chosen. I'm not entirely sure exactly what it can roll with, but it is the only other void bow that you could use to pair with this. I like it. I feel like it hits really hard. I also don't know if it's just because of the role I personally have. And then for fusion rifles and linear fusion rifles, oh boy, this is where the list gets cracked. You have Telesto. Everybody who is a veteran at Destiny knows what Telesto is, knows what Telesto does. It breaks the game. It literally exists and it breaks the game. When you shoot it out, you shoot these little like crystal type objects and they explode and they deal a ton of damage. It's really good in PvP. It's really good in PvE, especially this season with unstoppable fusion rifles. You have a Glaciocasm, which comes from the Dawning event, which I'm hoping comes back because I never got a good roll, and it's a really good fusion rifle, especially with fusion rifle changes, rolls high impact reserves, all that other good stuff. It's a really, really solid option. And then you have the new linear fusion from this season, from the seasonal pass, Lorentz Driver. Now, if you can get to the telemetry pickups on this weapon and you get your 50% damage buff, this thing is a monster. It hits really, really hard. And then with the catalyst, when you have all three of your little telemetry patterns, you body shot and you get the little void black hole suction damage thing. It's really good. I'm still working on the catalyst myself. It's really, really good. And then finally, you have Threaded Needle. Now, this is probably the best legendary fusion rifle, linear fusion rifle in the game with Vorpal weapon. Now you can get it with on cartridge Vorpal, which is what I have, and this thing puts out DPS like a monster. This thing is insane. It rivals that of Sleeper. It rivals that of 1000 Voices. It's a really solid option, and it's fairly easy to farm. It's another season of the chosen legendary weapon. Now, what I would personally do is I would keep it so that you at least have one void weapon. You know, whether that be Le Monarch, whether that be your heavy, and if you are running void as your subclass, make it so that's your auto rifle. The biggest thing about this is making sure that you know what your teammates are running for elemental, shield cracking, and all the other stuff, and make sure that when you do this build, make sure there's at least a few void shields, so this way you don't hinder your progress, how it works, you know, because if there's no void shields and you're running a void weapon, you're really just going to be sitting around waiting for someone to crack that shield before you can do damage yourself. Now, I personally definitely recommend just using void with this, like the void subclass, you know, but again, you can use it for other things. I want to test Nezric Sins in Grandmaster content with Stasis to see if it's going to be as good, or I don't know. It's definitely not going to be better than I Have Another World, because I Have Another World is just straight up, you know, regen for your abilities, and you can see, you know, people get targeted, which helped me a lot in Saber last season because of seeing the invisible Randalls. Really, really helpful. But I want to try it. I want to see how Nez Sins compares to I Have Another World, namely because this season, you know, we have a lot of really, 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 really good void weapon options for our champions, you know. Another thing too, if you want to use like unstopped sidearms and unstopped swords, you know, there's Falling Guillotine, which is also really good, and there's the one from the dungeon, Swift Verdict, I believe it is called, the Trials of the Nine-Sider. That one is also really good. Or Traveler's Chosen, like I mentioned, also has Osmosis. Really, really good option for that to be usable in endgame content this season with unstoppable sidearms and all that other stuff. But when you make this build, you know, just remember, use what you want. Don't feel like you need to use everything that I've showcased in this video in case you don't have them. You know, you might not have the elemental well mods that I've shown. You might not have protective light. You might not be that far in your artifact to have particle deconstruction. You know, just play it how you want to play it and use this as a outline, a guideline to craft your own build. Craft your own build that resonates with you, that feels good with you. You know, don't take mine or other YouTuber videos to heart. Like, don't always just full on go for that, because there's a lot of things that goes on when you make these things. You know, it has to fit good with you. You like the gameplay loop, you know, like there are some people out there like, oh, just throw your melee every 5 seconds. Like, you know, you might not be used to that style of gameplay. You know, if you like to throw grenades and you like to have a lot of recharge rate on your stuff, you know, go for this build. It's solid. It's a solid Warlock build for people who are new or people who just want to have fun. I will try it in Grandmasters at least once because Lake of Shadows is where I'm going to test all my shit because Lake of Shadows is easy as hell. But with that being said, I hope this video was informative to the least and that you at least take a little inspiration from this. And with that being said, I hope you all have a fantastic day and enjoy yourselves to the fullest.